Well, let's start by taking a moment to, be aware that we've rejoined our community here, bring awareness to our body sitting here. Kind of checking in with it. This kind of helps us by, scanning our bodies. It helps us really bring our mental attention to what's going on right now instead of the past or the future. And please check in with the mind as well. What has captured your attention? And then let your attention come to rest on your breath, the sensation of the breath going in and out, either at your belly or the tip of your nose. Try to allow whatever thoughts arise to just pass through like clouds in the sky. And bring to mind your motivation for showing up this evening. And set a positive intention to use your time well. Of course, all the teachings of the Lam Rim would say showing up to discuss the Dharma is an excellent activity. And showing up to discuss the Dharma with an underlying motivation to become more of benefit to others makes that motivation even more powerful for this and future lives. It's making good use of our precious human rebirth. Because we know death is definite. No one can stop death. We cannot increase the amount of time we have left. And we really have very little time to practice Dharma. So we need to practice. And since the time of our deaths is uncertain, The length of our lives are unknown. But we know that many things can cause death, but few things cause life. Our bodies are extremely fragile. So we need to practice now. And when our time of death comes, really, it's only our spiritual path that can help us. All our belongings can't help us. Our family and friends can't help us. And our bodies can't help us. They are now failing. So the more that we can practice with a pure motivation in every moment, using this precious human rebirth as best we can accumulate all sorts of positive imprints on our mind stream. We can prepare our mind for the moment of death so we can reduce our attachment or our aversion to that moment, and instead embrace it as an opportunity to ripen a positive seed to continue our spiritual path in the next life. So now let's recite the four immeasurables to strengthen our motivation for this evening. To really think about others, to always bring others into our mind stream, every moment of mind. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So, this is our last night of this module. Any questions that have come to mind? None at all. Y'all all ready for death? No doubts about what you're going to do?
As long as it doesn't happen today. I mean,
you're just making a joke, I hope.
Yeah, no. Yesterday, I think it was Venerable Renee really emphasized that most of us don't count on it happening today. It's going to happen, we accept that, but sometime way in the future.
Or even just not today.
But definitely today.
Right. I mean, it's not just that we're certain of that. That's one of our problems, is we don't have doubt about that. It won't happen today. I won't choke on my dinner today. I won't have a heart attack today. I won't get hit by a truck today. It's very interesting how much we have doubt about. Well, we really don't have doubt about that. We're convinced it won't be today. And this is an obstacle. This is one of those things we really, if we meditate a little bit every single day on the reality that death could be today, we'll finally have an experience of that truth. And this can help us not to waste our time. I always laugh at myself when I think of the expression, killing time. Oh, I'm just killing time. Well, that's brilliant. What a brilliant activity. So, we really want to, I think this is why it's stressed so much in the teachings, to don't forget, you've got a precious human rebirth, and don't forget the time of death is uncertain, so we really want to practice today. And what does practice mean in this context?
Remembering.
Okay, Hernan.
Being ready, and on a sense that like on a acceptance of whatever comes.
But is that the practice? What do we want to, when we have this understanding? Yeah, Rebecca.
To practice the dissolution stages so that when it happens, you're ready.
Yeah, we need to do that. We can do that as we fall asleep every night. But what does it really mean to remember this and not waste our time? Nicole?
I was going to say, reflecting on the precious human rebirth.
That's how we remember it, is by reflecting on it. But how does doing those things, how can it impact?
Oh, not wasting time on mundane activity and working on your getting as far on the path to enlightenment as possible.
Right, spiritual practice, making sure we use our time.
How do we do that?
Well, look at our minds.
Bodhicitta.
So how do we use bodhicitta, John?
I guess if you really thought that it was your last day, or you had that sort of realization, you would find a lot more meaning in all the small things you can do to benefit others, instead of, sometimes kind of going through the motions, I guess.
So how can we prevent going through the motions? Nicole, you're not unmuted.
Setting an intention for the activities we're doing. And
yeah, that's not a little thing. We don't have to go and. Really, it's about setting an intention before anything that we're doing to make it Dharma. That's how we don't waste our time. It has nothing to do with what we're actually doing. We want to make whatever we're actually doing Dharma. So we want to, really train our minds to be able to frame everything in a way that makes it Dharma. And if we simply can't do it, then we have to question whether we should be doing that activity. But there, as you study the Lamrim, you'll keep finding more and more information that, kind of makes you realize that, the Buddha didn't miss a thing. So, it's even, there's even rest included in it. You have to have the power of relinquishment so that you can maintain the joy in your practice. And practice it's all about the mind, isn't it? So it's about mind training. That's all it's really about, is mind training. So we want to practice really bringing to mind, how can I make this action be of benefit to others? What is it that makes it beneficial to others. And then we can set our intention around that. So how about taking care of our bodies? You know, like we have to bathe, we have to eat. You know, we go to the gym, some of us, maybe not now. So, but so how can we look at that action in our, you know, how can we set a mental intention to make it Dharma?
When you say I'm going to do this activity, take this shower so I can clean my body, so I may become, you know, may this be a part of helping me actualize the path and doing it not only for myself so that I can benefit others and
so
become.
But you need to find, those are the right words, okay? But you need to find what is it about taking a shower, eating food, or, you know, that will get you on the, you know, keep you on the path to enlightenment.
Right, so for a shower, cleanse my body so that I can.
So that what?
That I can become enlightened.
No. Okay, so you're skipping a huge important step. Why do we need to take care of our body?
Well, one reason is so that you don't smell bad, and if you're trying to talk to Dharma about other people, that you're doing it for other sentient beings so that they're not repulsed by being around you.
Yes, that'd be one way to think about it. What's another way? Why do we have to take care of our body?
To live another day, if possible.
Right. It's a precious human rebirth. We need to treat our body well. And so we've come to learn that cleanliness helps, you know, lower disease. It helps keep you from being smelly and making people not want to hang out with you, you know. But then we also want to think, okay, you know, I have to take care of the planet too. You know, do I use too much water? Do I use, you know, all these other things? So we want to really, you know, make the effort to try to start thinking about things in a way that we can connect the dots. You know, being able to think, you know, of course I need to take care of this body. It's a precious human rebirth. So I'm going to take care of it so that I'm more like, you know, so I have good health and, you know, all these different, I'm clean because you know, awake, maybe you take a shower to wake up in the morning so that you can really be ready to go with however you participate in community with your job. So it's, you know, it's about thinking, so we eat for the same reason, you know? So we, you know, and when people who have initiations to, you know, be able to arise as a deity, you know, they're taking care of, you know, the deity. So, whoops, you know, it's all about, you know, kind of remembering all these different aspects of the path and how each, you know, activity is like that. So what can we think about work? Does that help with about taking care of your body?
It does, because you need money to survive. Otherwise, you don't even have a place to live.
Right. So you want to think about that. And then you can think about how your participation in, you know, the work of the world helps other people, you know, that it's all part of this. We all contribute in some way, you know, but it's not the only way we can contribute. But if we're working, we want to bring that into the thought in our intentions. You know, we may have, you know, oh, and I also work to help take care of my family or, you know, whatever. I mean, but we really want to be intentional. So it's so helpful to put it into a Dharma context. Yes, Renee.
I like to think that every interaction that we have with other human beings, we are planting seeds, positive or bad seeds. You know, talking loud with somebody, you know, giving attention, like going to the supermarket, paying attention what is the name of the person and saying good morning and saying their name because sometimes people are just like giving them bad behavior throughout the day, and they something like simple acts that make people happy, you know, and make people feel considered by others.
Yeah. I mean, these are the ways that we practice that, but only if we think about it that way. You know, that's just one of the parts of the teachings about taking vows and, you know, and is this idea that we want to, because since every mental event places a seed on our mental continuum, we want to make each of those positive. And the way we do that is by setting intentions, you know, and then, you know, and so when we take vows, we're setting the intention for a certain length of time. For the next 24 hours, I'm going to do this, and I'm doing it for the benefit of others because this is training my mind. You know, you have this whole thing. If you take vows for your life, then you have that, you know, you're setting that motivation when you take them. And that gives each of those moments that you're fulfilling that vow. You're not killing, you're not stealing, you're not lying. It gives each of those moments, you know, this positive imprint. You're keeping your vow. So, you know, this is how we can really accumulate heaps of merit. And I know everybody, you know, in the West kind of goes, ooh, but that's all about me. Well, we have to accomplish our own welfare to be able to accomplish the welfare of others. You know, it's only about us in the sense of we need merit in order to become enlightened, in order to benefit others. You know, so we want that complete thought. You know. So in our, you know, so when we go through the day, it's just like Hernan said, we can think about things like, well, you know, may all my interactions with living beings be kind, patient, and non-harmful. You know, to be mindful of others, because this helps me, you know, crush my self-cherishing mind or self-centered mind and puts others, you know, it cherishes others. And that will help me get to, like, you know, is this making sense? You know, and that's how we can turn, you know, so like when you go to sleep at night, you know, you're thinking about, you know, that this is similar to the process of the body dying, you know, falling asleep. So I'm going to think about that. Then you're also, so that you know, I have a habit of being able to be positive at the time of death and not cling to this life. And this will help me create the cause for, you know, my next, you know, another, you know, for a good seed to ripen. And when this becomes sort of habitual, it doesn't take up so much room, you know, because you just get into the habit of doing it. It's just the way you think. You start just thinking that way, you know, but it does, in the beginning, we need that mindfulness to be able to turn it into a habit. You know? So you can, you know, have little reminders on your phone, you know, pop up, you know, say, set an intention, something like that, you know, remember the point. So it's just, you know, and this makes it easier. And then, you know, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you know, put that book together, the Bodhisattva Attitude, you know, where you can think of verses, you know, like when I walk through this door, may I be entering, you know, leading all beings out of samsara to enlightenment, you know. But what's important is that you feel it. So, you know, it may not, that may be just too Dharma-ish or too, you know, scripture-ish for you, you know. So, you know, it's you may have to reword things so that it so it activates your, you know, aspirations to be a benefit and not to do any harm. You know? So one of the things you can think is that with, you know, like with any of your activities, you know, you think, oh, I'm, you know, bringing all, I'm an example for all sentient beings of, you know, to have setting intentions and then dedicating. You see, the beautiful thing is that if you set an intention before an activity, then you can dedicate the merit of it at the end or at the end of the day. Because every moment that you have mindfulness of your intention, you're putting positive imprints, and we can rejoice in that. Is this, am I just preaching to the choir here? And if you can't, if this is difficult, you know, if it's just sort of like difficult, it really helps to write it down. I don't mean, you know, like, although I've done this, is, you know, I've used sticky notes for all of this kind of stuff. But it helps also in order, you know, to kind of practice this habit, it helps to write things down in your own words. Like, why do you go to work? You know, and then think about setting an intention. You know, how can I spend my time when I'm at home, when I'm, you know, my free time, my non-community time, you know, how can I turn that into Dharma? How can I think about it? So you write these things down and then you get better at it. You know, it's like setting an intention when you set a motivation before you do meditation or any formal practice. You know, it can really help to write some things down so that you're not kind of, oh, I don't know. So because it's a way to practice. It just depends on you, what helps you. But most of us can benefit from doing little exercises where we, you know, kind of look at it. And then has anybody checked out like the inner job description app from the FPMT? So if you get in the habit of using that, that really can help, you know, create this habit of just thinking before you actually start an activity or 10 minutes into the activity or whatever. So. All right, so this is sort of a review night of the last, this death and rebirth. So the whole point of discussing death and really reflecting on it is really about mind training in it, because at the time of death, that's not the time to be training ourselves. That's the time to put it into practice. So we really want to have worked on this ahead of time. And so we want to find things that remind us of how impermanent our bodies are. And then the next module talks about karma. So, you know, these two things fit together, that our karma, you know, follows us from life to life. We carry it upon our subtle mind. Lamo, did you want to speak? I'm sorry, raising your hand doesn't always help because I can't see everybody on the screen. So, Lamo, you're muted.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, what I wanted to say was, when you were talking about bodhicitta and the intention, I had started practicing, well, somebody suggested years ago that if you keep saying like a mantra, just be kind, just be kind, just be kind, you know, and you leave, you know, going, just be kind to myself. But it starts after a while to come like into you. And when you're not being kind, you kind of notice that more than having to remind yourself. So it's a small little, you know, just to say when you're driving, just be kind, just be kind. And it just seeps in.
Yes, it's absolutely, because what we practice becomes stronger. Yeah, thank you, Amo. Yeah, it's exactly like that. You know, so we can, you know, start with something very straightforward, especially if it is in, you know, in an area that we might, you know, need some work, you know, we need some help. So we may, you know, so if you're, if kind speech is something that often you forget, you know, then, you know, saying that as a mantra can really help. Because it's just like Mamo said, because then you notice when you're not being kind, you know. And the same thing with, you know, do no harm. You know, and we want to think about these things, you know, like when you're trying to come up with setting intentions for your activities, you know, when you're reflecting on that, then it helps to be able to start connecting the dots, to really understand that formal practice, you know, sitting on your cushion, meditating, reading a Dharma book is not all the practice there is. We can make every moment practice. And so we want to become adept at being able to interpret our activities in a dharmic way, so that when we can't, that gives us pause of whether or not the activity is something we want to do. You know, and that, and you know, so it's important to remember that the power of relinquishment, which is when we rest, in order to, you know, when we realize we're, you know, we need some rest from this, that we're doing that to maintain our joy in our practice or in our spiritual path, you know, in whatever way we phrase that, that is meaningful to us, and fits our, you know, our disposition. So in the form of a review, so, you know, we want to remember that if we don't think about our death, then we kind of fail to remember Dharma. You know, and if we don't think about death, even though we might remember the Dharma, we don't actually practice it. Or if we don't think about our death, our impermanence, when we attempt practice, we don't practice correctly. And this has something to do with just really being highly motivated to do it correctly. No, I mean, that's the, you know, thinking about death is, you know, part of its side effect is to motivate us to really use our time well. And if we have, the stronger our desire to end suffering for ourselves and everybody else, if that's our, you know, the stronger we make that motivation, the more we'll want to not waste our time. Does that make sense? Too many negatives. If we don't think about death, you know, our practice lacks intensity. We continue to create negative karma because we're kind of, you know, complacent. And then at the time of death, then we cling and go, oh, you know, we really regret not having used our time better, you know. So it's as if you're asleep from birth to death, never seeing the reality of life. And then all of a sudden, death comes. But if we remember death, then our lives can become more purposeful. It helps us destroy ignorance, attachment, and aversion. You know, if we start to, you know, like we learn about karma, and we learn what is actually not beneficial, what's not skillful. You know, these are things, we'll remember those things because we're remembering we're impermanent. And this can help inspire us to practice. If we keep remembering it, if we don't just do it, you know, the first year, if we do it throughout our lives, it helps, you know, keep our practice sort of vivid for us. You know, not just something that, oh yeah, you know, I'm a good Buddhist. There's a key, it says wanting to, you know, refresh this aspiration to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And then at the time of death, we feel like we've used our life well, purposefully, it's been meaningful, and then we don't have to have regret. We can be peaceful and encouraged about what's going to happen next. So also remembering death helps us, you know, we have to put all the dots together. So one is that, okay, if our mind is eternal, always existed, and because it's impermanent, because it's empty of existing inherently, you know, we can change our habits of mind, change, and that leads to the change in our results. And so this, you know, this idea that the mind is naturally pure, in other words, it doesn't matter how long we've been, you know, had unskillful habits, how long we've had negative habits, how many negative habits we do, we can still, it's not marred our mind. It hasn't like damaged the mind. It is still possible to eliminate the negative habits, and our Buddha potential can still be actualized. If it was inherently existent, we wouldn't be able to do that. Remembering that each moment of mind comes from a previous moment of mind can help remind us that if our mind's going down a certain, you know, theme and it's not skillful, then we can interrupt it and choose to think in a more skillful way. You know, so this is like when you're going off to work and you're kind of like, oh God, another day of work. That's when we can really, you know, pause and say, okay, there's, you know, how can I make my work day beneficial to myself and others? So who can explain the dissolutions to me? Not in great detail, just what is this process at the, you know, that we can practice when we're falling asleep?
I think it's just trying to be able to recognize certain signs like smoke and spark, and there's the elements of the body are stopping to support life. You know, there's the air and the water and the earth. The earth would be, you know, the solid things, and you can sometimes see these things happen in somebody that is or an animal that is dying very slowly, say over a period of months or something.
And then what happens? After those, you know, the earth element and the water element and the fire element, what happens? What's going on? So all your body stopped functioning. You can't even breathe anymore. What happens then?
Well, now you go into the bardo.
Not yet.
Not yet. You're not dead yet.
You're clinically dead. So somebody else help Jack out.
So it's after the fourth stage when the breath stops, correct? Is that right?
Yeah.
And then the fifth stage that's the white drop. Goes from the crown.
It's the white appearance,
right? And then
which represents the white drop melting down to the heart.
Right, and then the red, and then the sixth stage is the red drop going up to the heart, and then in the seventh stage, the red and the white, they cover your mind, or the indestructible drop. So the mind and indestructible drop are used. What's the word I'm looking for? Synonymously, yes. In that context.
Well, let's talk about that. Okay, so what's actually happening? You know, we have all these words like, you know, the drop or this or that. What's going on with the mind during this?
Well, the mind is getting to its subtlest, like, so finally in the seventh and the eighth is when it's really getting at its most subtle state. And then in the eighth stage, that's the clear light stage where it's at its most subtle.
Okay, at the clear light stage, it's emptiness. Okay, so I'm going to go to the slides. Okay, so the disillusions, you know, they call it a disillusion when it's really, it's just like Jack said, it's our, you know, that the body is no longer able to support the consciousness. You know, the body's failing. And so with each phase, with each stage, there's, you know, a dissolution of one of the elements, like the form element or earth element. The sense powers, you know, are failing. Then the objects of that sense, so you can no longer see things, you know, all of these things are happening. And they also talk about our wisdoms, you know, and these wisdoms are mostly related to a functioning body and mind, you know. So we have, you know, so that there are these visions that arise, you know, so we want to be familiar with those visions so they won't freak us out at the time of death. So we can think about that. So gross consciousness has ceased when the white vision arises. Okay, so that's, you know, indication that we're going from our gross minds that we're all very familiar with, our sense consciousnesses, our conceptual thoughts, all of those things, into a more subtle level of consciousness. Okay, so all the sense consciousnesses have ceased to function. So those consciousnesses, that the ability to be aware of from form and sound and smells and taste and touch, you know, are latent now. There's no use for them because the sense powers and the physical sense powers have failed. So they no longer work. So what happens is that as it's getting more subtle, we have different visions. So like, you know, like Rebecca was saying. So in the fifth stage, that's right after the 80 conceptual minds have subsided. That's when the subtle winds in the body actually enter the central channel. Usually they're blocked from entering the central channel. We have these knots or chakras at the channel, you know, and they're knotted, and these things loosen at the time of death. And the white drop that's obtained from the father and the red drop that's obtained from the mother, they join at the heart. So one's flowing downward, one's raising up. And when the white drop is going down, then you have the radiant white increase.
Wait, what
okay?
did the white drop and the red drop from the father, like what's the background to that?
It's sperm and
Oh, so when we die,
egg.
but how come when we die they come up again? The sperm and the egg.
That's not something I really know.
Okay.
Okay. So they're not able, you know, they move. This is just, I mean, and Tantra gets into this in a much more detailed way, but it's a description of the subtle energies of the body now able to move. And not, you know, they're not really subtle energies of the body, but they're a form. And they do it in stages. So first, it goes from the crown down, and then from the sexual organ up.
And why do they come together again?
That's just what they do.
Oh,
Okay. I mean, the most subtle mind is trapped in a seed at what's called the indestructible drop at the heart. This opens at the time of death, and it's how our subtle mind goes from this life to the next. Okay. As the red drop rises up, that's when we have the radiant red increase. These are also, again, these are subtle levels of mind. So the physical aspect is creates these visions, but it's, you know, it's the grosser minds, like the conceptual minds keep getting, you know, just more and more subtle. They're not supported. And then there's a point at which the indestructible drop that's at the center of the central channel near the heart, or at the heart of the channels, not the organ of the heart. We have the black near attainment. We lose consciousness for a moment. But what we're losing is our dualistic minds. So we're dropping that, and that's what allows emptiness to arise. So the clear light is this vision of emptiness, you know? And that's what great yogis are looking to spot, is when this vision of complete emptiness arises, they can stay in meditative equipoise at this point to realize emptiness. The mind has stopped conceptual thought. There's no dualistic appearance. And then as soon as there's movement of the wind that the mind rides upon, even though we talk about the mind being non-physical, it is always carried by the wind. So the subtle mind has a subtle wind energy that supports it. And so that, when it moves, that wind, that moves the mind. And that's when you leave this body. And so then, according to Buddhism, that's actual death, when the consciousness leaves this body. Great yogis can stay in this state of clear light and utilize it to be liberated and become enlightened. But most of us can't. And people who have really deteriorated over a long period of time, and they're ordinary beings, they won't stay in that moment of clear light for very long.
Wait, that slide just now. So if you're the one up, yeah, here. So it says if you're severely consumed by disease. Oh, sorry. Okay, then there's no signs that the consciousness has left or not.
Right.
Okay, all right, never mind.
In some people, you'll see a drop of blood at the nose or a drop of liquid from the sex organ, that kind of thing. But it's not, it doesn't always happen. But like accomplished yogis, they often, like in monasteries or in Tibetan towns or whatever, the teachers will be present as someone's dying, saying, and they'll be reciting prayers and things, but they can also tell when the consciousness, if depending on the development of their minds, they can tell when the consciousness has left the body, whether there are signs of it or not, physical signs of it or not.
But basically every human being, whether they're Buddhist or whether they've reached yogi or not, they can reach emptiness. They can.
Well, they have clear light. This arises, it's part of the death process. But if we don't know what to do with it, it won't mean anything to us.
So what are we supposed to do with it?
We're just supposed to get familiar. This is the whole purpose of meditating on the disillusions at the time of death, is for us to get familiar that these things are going on, so that we start to recognize them, and then we develop, over time, when we finally develop come abiding and we're able to, our concentration is so great, then when we die, we'll be able to actually, be focused on what's going on with our mind, not focused on clinging to this life. It's a lot to read about, so Lama Yeshe's basic advice is, mainly think about the emptiness, of all phenomena. And, when our concentration is good and when we're distracted, just think about loving kindness. This gets back to what Lama was saying about, this idea of, we think simply, just, be kind, be kind, be kind. Do no harm, do no harm, do no harm. It's sort of like that. So at the time of death, or as our body's failing or whatever, we want, we want to, remember emptiness. We also want to remember loving kindness. And if we've developed our loving kindness to a significant degree, we can think about bodhicitta and hold that aspiration to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. But the point I wanted to emphasize is just that these are minds. Our minds, what's happening is our gross conceptual thought, our sense awarenesses are becoming, dormant, and our subtle awarenesses are manifesting. And it just keeps getting more and more subtle through each stage, until finally the most subtle mind arises, and we have this experience of clear light. And then as soon as we're, the mind moves, and so a great yogi can hold that concentration, the mind doesn't move. For most of us, our mind moves pretty quickly. We go into our bardo body. And then immediately the mind starts to get more gross again. We develop the awarenesses of a Bardo body, which is much more subtle than what we have here, and has different, you know, it's a very subtle body. You know. So, you know, again, this is emphasizes it's all about the mind. You know, we're trying to understand that our mind does not cease at the time of death, and our habits of mind continue with us, and that, you know, and whatever our state of mind is at that last moment of mind before the gross conceptions go dormant is the condition for a seed to ripen.
Venerable Tendron.
Yes, Vicki.
So anyone who is not accomplished enough to work with the clear light mind goes to the Bardo?
Well, no, the Bardo, I mean, there's an intermediate state. Some rebirths are not in the intermediate state. You know, if you go to the Pure Lands, you'll go to a Pure Land body being born out of a lotus. I don't think you go through the Bardo. So it just depends on whether you go to the Bardo or not. There's some births that are spontaneous, like when you're born in a Pure Land. So if you've done your good aspirational prayers and that's the seed that ripens, and you are, you know, you successfully, or your teacher has helped you, you know, transfer your consciousness to a Pure Land, then you won't go through a Bardo state. Does that make sense?
As much as anything does.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, this is the thing. So if we have created the cause and we have a strong positive mind at the time of death, and we have enough merit, it's possible that instead of going into the intermediate state and having a precious human rebirth, you know, but say, you know, because that's second best, you know, we go to a Pure Land, we skip the Bardo state.
So Bardo is only if you're being reborn as a human or whatever, right? Only.
An animal.
Right.
Yeah, I think hell beings are spontaneous. Hungry ghosts are probably, they might be spontaneous. I need to look that up.
What do you
I really don't.
What do you mean by spontaneous?
Just that you don't go through the intermediate state. So from this body dying, you're not born from a womb, you're not born from an egg, you're not born, you know.
Oh, I see. And can we like pray for someone to like?
Yes.
You want to pray for someone to have a good rebirth, or you want to pray for someone to like remove their bad karma? Can we do that?
Yes.
Like, can it
we
actually
can do all those things?
It would actually lighten someone else's karma. Bad karma.
Maybe. We can't actually, see, that's the thing. We can only experience things that we created the cause for. So the way that our prayers can benefit others is through the merit that we have friends who would be praying for us. You know? So it's through the strength of that connection, and because we've created the cause to have people who, you know, would be even aware of our death, would be making prayers at that time. All of those things is a result of merit. So, you know, that's the connection, because we, you know, I can't change your karma, you can't change my karma. But because of my karma, if you were, you know, if I've created the cause, have people pray for me at the time of my death, that can help my conditions in the Bardo, or help me, you know, have that rebirth into the Pure Land. So one of the more advanced practices is transference of consciousness. And so there's a lot of, like, if you read a lot of the details of the teaching, you know, like it's in the readings, you know, if we have a strong connection with our teacher, they may be willing to do the practice for the transference of consciousness. Not really willing, it's, you know, it's ability or not. But we can also do it for ourselves by, there's a practice of developing a habit of really being able to visualize our mind in the shape of like a little egg-shaped light at our navel, and then shoot it up through the top of our head. And we can use that same technique. That's a really good technique for uplifting the mind if you're dull in meditation. But it's also a technique to try to transfer your consciousness into like a Pure Land. You know. So this is going to depend on your developing the skill of meditation and concentration. Yes, Rebecca.
So, kind of following on Faye's question, so that means that if your guru practices POA and you're sent to Amitabha's Pure Land, it's not negating that karma, but it's maybe this is a question, not a statement. So it's maybe changing the seeds that will arise. So like you could have had a negative rebirth, but because of that, so those seeds still exist, but they're just not arising at that time. And then in the Pure Land,
they may have even arisen. I mean, they can happen in the bardo as well, or maybe not in the bardo, but the seed may ripen for you to say, be born as a animal.
Right.
Okay.
So then if your lamas does POA, it can activate other seeds, but you still have
well,
to.
You can go to the Pure Lands.
But you would still have karma. It's not like erasing negative karma, because like you said, the lama can't take on your karma. So you have to deal with that karma through purification, or it arises.
Yeah, I mean, it can come up again, but it won't come up again if you use your time in a Pure Land, exceedingly well and become enlightened or liberated.
Okay,
yeah.
That's just clarifying. And I think Hernan had a question as well.
Okay, let me finish with this just a moment. So the ability for your lama to do this, your teacher to do this for you, is still dependent on your karma. You know, the success of it is going to depend on your merit. So just, it's not just through the power of the lama. It's still a two-way proposition, you could say. And yes, Hernan.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Can I just sorry, Hernan. So, but that would also have to do with your guru-disciple relationship as well, or?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
All sorts of things. I mean, but it's your merit. You have to have a certain level of merit for it to work. So it's like, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche may be willing to do the POA for you, but because, the power of your mind hasn't, your merit's just not sufficient for it to be successful. Because it's both. It's the merit of both the student and the teacher.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Hernan.
How does it go about the fetus time before the actual birth? The fetus time before actual birth, when like before the birth.
Before the
fetus,
birth.
the word? Yeah, before the birth, on the womb, in the womb. How does that play with the bardo?
Okay, the womb is after the bardo state. Okay, so you die, your mind leaves this body, and it goes into the body, takes the form of a juvenile, whatever seed ripened. So let's talk about our previous life. So when we were in the bardo before this life, we would have had the body of a juvenile male or female looking for parents. Our attachment, our attraction, all of these things would be looking around for suitable, to beings that we want to be close to. We're not thinking about birth, we're actually thinking about sex. So we're humans, that's what we're attracted to. It's a desire realm, all this kind of stuff. So we find someone that we go, oh yes, that, we go straight forward, and then we end up in the fertilized egg. So and then, so at the time that egg has been, I don't know, implanted in the womb, then your consciousness enters that, and this life began.
So would the 9 months for the pregnancy be considered like still like some sort of like purification that is happening? Or
it's your life.
How about the consciousness?
It's there. So your gross consciousnesses haven't, it's a state in stages, because those are the sense consciousness and your conceptual thought. So it's a process of development, because we're dependent on, in samsara, we're dependent on this body. So the brain development's going to be a factor when, for the support of all those consciousnesses. But your subtle consciousness is there throughout the, from that point of it being implanted or something to birth. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so say someone's born prematurely, and so all their organs aren't functioning yet, and they put in an incubator, in order to more fully develop. So some of their awarenesses may not be functioning. Their hearing might not be functioning yet, It just depends on the development of the body at that point. But it's like, when babies are born, they will usually turn their heads towards the sound of their parents' voices. They seem to recognize the voices. So there's consciousness, there's awareness going on. It's just not the awareness of a fully formed human brain yet, as a physical support for that mind.
I have heard before that the regular method of like the birth of a child, that the doctors will slap the baby's butt to make it cry, and that kind of like, it's almost like a sudden act that could make the conscience forget previous life or previous moments of life.
I don't know. They talk about the suffering of birth. Think about it, the whole process. It's not just the moms that are going through shock. It's not an easy process on the baby either. So there's you're going from this wonderful, all your needs are being taken care of in this, warm, floaty environment. And all of a sudden you're in this, there's light, there's pressure against the body, I don't know. But they say it's very disturbing. So, and then, yes, if you're fortunate enough to have a very peaceful birth, in the sense of, not a whole lot of, drama and trauma to mother or child, and it's, nobody has to, pat your bottom to make you start breathing, then it's a little easier, and that of course is related to your karma. But it's still considered one of the sufferings of samsara is birth, and birth is not pleasant. It's a startling kind of thing. So I don't think we can blame the person who spanks our bottom as the reason why we can't remember our previous lives. I think mostly it's that we haven't developed our mind enough to, in our concentration. But certainly, it's like in this, once we're born, if we experience a traumatic event, we often can't remember. When I got hit by a car, I can't remember. I can remember realizing the car was going to hit me, but I can't remember anything after that point. But I tried to get out of the way, all that stuff. So there was stuff going on, but I don't remember it. And so, yes, trauma can, prevent either our access to that information or, however that works. So birth could certainly be one of those traumas, you know. And then I do think that the environment, how this, how your parents or your family of caregivers, however, you know, how they look at past and future lives can also have an influence. You know. But some people, even in the West, remember their past lives. So.
What was that meditation you mentioned, or the thing about the egg-shaped thing coming from the navel to the head? Like, what is that called? So, because
you may need to read some of the readings.
Oh.
Let me see if it's in this. No, that's a long book. It's called different things depending on its purpose, but you know, it's a bit, you know, it's in the section on transference of consciousness.
Okay, all right, I'll read that part then.
That might help. So.
Just to confirm, Faye, you have all the readings, right? I sent it to you at the beginning of the course.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
So the main thing, you know, like since it was brought up about others, if you're in the presence of someone else dying, the most important thing you can do is to keep them, make the environment for their death as peaceful as possible. If they're Buddhist and they have practices, they may want you to recite their practices with them, you know, so that they can remember them all, get them done, their daily commitments, things like that. But if they're not Buddhist, then it's, and even whether they're Buddhist or not, peaceful is what's important, you know. Not circumstances that will allow attachment or aversion to arise. So reassurance can be appropriate, all those things. But it's this,
I had a question, like you keep talking about like merit. Just wondering the difference between like merit and like good karma. Because I
they're
understand.
the same.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So merit is just the accumulation of positive potentials we placed on our mind stream. And that gives rise, when we meet the conditions for those to ripen, you know, but we're storing them on our mind stream, so to speak. And so all of our positive actions of body, speech, and mind place positive potentials on our mind stream. And so at the time of death, we really want, especially when that last moment where before our gross consciousnesses have dissolved, so to speak, into the more subtle consciousness, that mind, that is the condition for the karmic seed the potential from a complete action, whether it's positive or negative, that has the power to determine a rebirth, ripens. And so we want to really be habituated to having sort of a positive condition of mind.
Venerable Tendron?
Yes, Lamo.
Have you heard, you know, or read, sorry, in any of the books, something that they would call good, bad merit? I had never, you know, for the previous question about merit and virtue, have you seen written down or Rinpoche or the Dalai Lama ever mention the words bad merit?
Well, I mean, it is, you could say it's you know, it's like demerit. You know, we also place negative potentials on our mind stream. I mean,
but when we as Buddhists use the word merit,
we're usually talking just about good karma.
Right, correct. So that's what I'm saying. I never, you know, bad merit.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's just a poor English translation.
Okay, because sometimes when I was taught, what Rinpoche had said to me, that sometimes if we're not trained or taught, that what we might think is ripening as bad karma for us is actually the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Just that, it doesn't feel good or look nice, but it's
Right. Oh, yeah, that's absolutely true. We're not, our ordinary minds are not, really, we're still working as long as we're still not really clear over what, but all conditions are an opportunity to create positive merit. All conditions, because that's just a matter of our mind. It's a matter of how we respond to what condition it is. So no matter how bad it is, it can be a condition for us to accumulate merit.
So if we train our mind, we train our mind that you think like that all the time?
Yeah, of course we can.
Yeah.
And that's why Rinpoche encourages us to set intentions, the bodhicitta for every activity is to really work on training our minds all the time to do things from the big picture point of view, not just this moment, in this life in cyclic existence.
Okay, thank
you. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, because at one of his teachings, and then I'm grasping it a little, that as Buddhists, he says, we practice for our next life, not for this life.
Right.
And it took many years I heard that, and I still quite don't grasp it.
Well, I mean, that's probably because you're grasping at this life. I mean, that's what we do. Our self-cherishing and our ignorance tend to cause us to, put our immediate experience of what's going on above everything else. And it's hard to train our minds to not worry about that because it's not significant. If our minds have been always existent, it's a very long time. So every moment of mine is nothing. So worrying about whatever condition we're in every moment is really not a good use of our time. It's much more important to try to keep putting everything into the context of the bigger picture.
Which is our next life after we die.
Well, I mean, it's just it's that we want to become enlightened. So this life, the conditions of this life, all we want to do is keep creating the cause to have good conditions for becoming enlightened. So, and whether it's whether we become enlightened in this life or a future life, it's just that we want to think of that.
So I'm still a normal attached person.
Yeah, big surprise.
Surprise after 30 years. Yay! I mean, it's difficult not to, because you want.
It all depends on our habit of mind. If we look at some practitioners, it's clear that they've made some progress in this area and they don't really think too much about this life. We see social workers that are like that. We see all kinds of people who really just seem to focus on benefiting in others and they don't seem too concerned about their own experience. So it's kind of cool. And that's just training. And that's it.
Yeah, no, I just didn't think of Mother Teresa popped up in my head.
Yeah.
When you said that, like as an example.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an example. I mean, not that we can read her mind, but, or could read her mind, but but her actions seem to indicate that.
Yes, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So there's, you know, Rinpoche often talks about, Lama Zopa Rinpoche often talks about that the basic, you know, you could look at it very simply, very straightforwardly, that any action that's done for happiness of this life is not Dharma. You know, just very simple. That for it to be Dharma, and we must at least be thinking about the next life. But, you know, we don't, you know, if that is disturbing to your mind, then the way we work with it is trying to reframe whatever activity we're doing, where we really look at how we can connect this dot to, you know, being able to benefit others in the future. You know, so that our actions are not just caught up in me and what's happening right now. You know, looking at it much more from the long view. So taking care of this body in order for it to be healthy, have the energy to benefit others, all those kinds of things, you know, ways of framing our self-care, you know, resting from, you know, to be able to be still be energetic towards wanting to benefit others in whatever we do. You know, all of these ways of trying to really frame our moments into this big picture idea so that we don't get bogged down by our habit of being self-centered, you know, that ignorance of grasping at this self as being more important than other, you know. And then in coming from that angle, we want to try to really work on the angle of just looking at it. Okay, so yes, I need to take care of myself. I need, you know, those are all necessary. But the reason I really want to do it is that so I have, you know, so I'm able to be of more benefit, you know, to others. My leg is asleep. I don't do well sitting in the chair. Yes. So anyway, so it's a lot. I mean, this is why this is just the 4th module or something in this curriculum, you know. So next time is karma. So we'll learn lots more about merit and, you know, like Lama said, bad merit or non-merit demerit. So, you know, these are the origins and causes of our suffering, is our past actions. So understanding cause and effect is really important. And you know, really being able to come from the point of view of life is, you know, uncertain. We don't know how long we'll have this precious human rebirth. So we want to use our time well. And we want to create the cause to, you know, have another good rebirth, you know, whether it's in a pure land or another precious human rebirth, so that we can continue developing our mind training in order to become enlightened and, you know, be able to truly be of benefit to others. So there's a lot more about what we can train our minds in, the more we understand the Dharma. You know, there are all sorts of techniques like transference of consciousness and all this stuff. But if death were to happen tomorrow, because it's not going to happen today, we're all certain of that. So we want to, you know, try to put our minds, you know, in between those moments of freaking out. We want to try to have that, you know, keep thinking of, you know, may I have another good rebirth so I can continue my, you know, my love of other beings. You know, we just want to keep it as positive as we can. If you have refuge, if you're already taken refuge, then you want to, you know, you want to think about that. If you have a teacher, if, you know, if you see His Holiness or Venerable Rabina or Lama Zopa Rinpoche or whomever, Venerable Renee, as your teacher, you want to think of them and really hold, because if that makes you feel good, that's a good condition for the ripening of the seed. If you instead think, oh, I don't want to be separated from my teacher, that's not, you just make an aspirational prayer. May I never be separated from my teacher in this and all future lives. That's a good prayer to say every day. So it's just about, trying to come up with what is the most positive. So if you're still very attached to your loved ones of this life and you just think, oh, I really want to have a good rebirth so that I can return to benefiting so-and-so, and all sentient beings. Because the truth of the matter is, if the Buddhist teachings are correct, we have felt that way about every living being. Every living being's been our grandchild. Every living being has been our mother. Every living being has been our best friend. So we have felt true, deep affection for every living being. So if we kind of have that mind, looking forward to the next life, to repay the kindness of all sentient beings. So it's a matter of thinking about these things every day till we have this sort of heartfelt understanding of it, so that when we think of it at the time of death, it's sincere. There's an energy there of seeing it as a truth, that it really is possible to develop affection for all living beings. That it really is possible to want to do no harm at all. That it's really possible to cherish all living beings, above oneself. So we want to, it's good to remind ourselves why this path has attracted us, for whatever reason it is. If it's just the idea that, we could actually end suffering, that it's within our ability to do that. And then that knowledge of knowing that if we could end our own suffering, we certainly wouldn't want to stop there. We want to help others in their suffering. So it's logical. We know this about ourselves. We wouldn't just go, well, I'm good. I don't care about you guys, but I'm good. That's not going to happen. That's not who we are. This is our Buddha nature. Our Buddha nature, doesn't want anybody to suffer. Our disturbing emotions do. But they're wrong conceptions. And so we just want to lean more heavily on our more accurate conceptions. So
I have a question. It's about, I'm just curious what the Buddhist perspective is on dreaming. I know this is kind of a segue.
It's off the topic, but also I don't know anything about it.
Okay. All right.
I've been basically taught that the dreams, that maybe your dreams early in the morning might have some relevance. I've also been taught that sometimes if we're doing strong practices, we may have dreams that reflect purification of negativities, like being very sick and vomiting a lot, things that kind of bring to mind the idea we're getting rid of our negativities. Or we have dreams of accumulating lots of virtue. We may have dreams about our teachers, things like that.
Can we what if we have dreams of us doing bad things? Does that mean we're having?
That's just habit energy. Welcome to your mind.
So does that mean we're generating karma in our dreams, right?
No, you can't accumulate karma of things you haven't actually done. So, but it is practicing habits, but you can't, so it's just this, so this is not the topic for this course. So, sorry, you have to still think about death and rebirth, so So just when you're going to sleep tonight, think about death. Don't think about your dream.
Okay. Because in the reading, there was something that Lama Yeshe said. I think it was like the dream state is a more clean, clear state of mind.
Yes, because it's a more subtle consciousness. It's not our gross consciousness are asleep, so to speak.
Okay. All right. I get it now.
Yeah. So it's a good, it's, you know, so if we practice having a good state of mind at the time of falling asleep, first of all, that's creating the habit that helps us at the time of death to have a good state of mind. But it can also help us have peaceful dreams. You know, so if you're watching some violent, you know, movie or TV program, that can cause very disturbed dreams as you sleep. You know, so it's you know, it's kind of common sense, you know, but it's valuable to recognize that we want to do everything we can to give us good conditions to have a peaceful kind of mind, not ones that get us all riled up. You know, our addiction to sensation is an addiction. It's not skillful. You know, it's because that's why we're in the desire realm. You know, we like sensation. So we want to watch that, be aware of it, so we're not feeding that addiction. But there are certainly teachings on lucid dreaming and things like that. So you can look into that, but it's more like, you know, we really need to try to train our mind in what we're doing when we're awake. And that will probably help us when we're asleep. So setting an intention, like one of the recommended things to do, you know, so at the end of the day, you kind of review, you try to think about any unskillful actions you've done, you apply the 4 opponent powers of regretting and, you know, setting up a plan to, you know, maybe apologize or try to do better, you know, and then you set your determination to think about doing it, not doing it the same way and trying to do it differently. And then you think about all the positive things you've done that day. You know, every time you've thought about, oh yeah, I remembered that, you know, I want to set an intention, or you remember that, oh, I want to use kind speech, you know, then you rejoice about those things. And then you try to rejoice about all the kindnesses and all the good things that have happened that day from all living beings. Rejoice in all those. And then you go to sleep with this, oh, I can't wait I want to sleep well tonight because I want to wake up tomorrow refreshed to be able to be kind again. You know. So these are just ways of practice, because if we really look at what our mind's thinking when we're falling asleep, and, you know, we might be thinking terrible things like, oh God, I have to wake up tomorrow and start this whole work thing all over again. I mean, you know, we really want to look and see how we're training our mind. And try to interrupt unskillful patterns of thought. Does that make sense? So just when you're thinking about the body failing, remember that the mind is just becoming more subtle. The gross levels of mind are becoming dormant. And then as soon as you go to your next life, whether it's spontaneous rebirth in the Pure Lands, you know, or a birth from the womb, you know, that you know, the consciousness, the subtle consciousness goes to that, you know, goes to the intermediate state, and then it will go to its rebirth. So it's just this process, you know, but the mind doesn't cease. So we'll have more time.
If we don't die tonight.
We'll still have more time. Your mind's going to go somewhere.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, that's the thing we need to really understand about these teachings is, yes, this body's going to end and we have a precious human rebirth. So we really want to kind of, you know, continue this trend. So, you know, but the mind is not going to end. So grasping at this life when it's time to let it go, what we're letting go of is just this contaminated body. You know, that's born of our past negative actions and, you know, arisen from ignorance, plus the contaminated virtues. Our virtues from previous lives are contaminated with ignorance. And so that's why we're still in cyclic existence. So even our precious human rebirth is, you know, a result of ignorance. But that's all talking about, you know, contaminated aggregates.
Wait, you said our precious human rebirth is a result of ignorance?
Yep.
How so?
Because that's cyclic existence. We enlightened beings don't go through this.
Right, okay, true.
They went through it many, 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 many times, but they're free from it because it's born out of ignorance. So once you eliminate ignorance, you get, you know, you're not stuck in this kind of existence. But the consciousness throughout all of this never ceases. Okay, I think everybody's done with this. Anybody have thoughts or other things on their mind? Not dreams, but I mean on this subject of death and rebirth. So what are, you know, if you just had to bear it down to the very basic thing for where you are, what can you do to take this information to benefit yourself for future lives?
Just remember that it's coming and it could be today.
And like, so what?
Well, so don't waste it. Don't waste any time. You can make every action dharma or not.
Well, and so one of the things we want to just keep in mind is that since death could come even today, you know, that trying to make our minds happy is a smart move. You know, so if we're feeling all, you know, low because we're self-cherishing, I mean, that's where our low moods come. Oh, my life's not so good. It's like, you know, Lama Yeshe and his self-pity mind, you know, so it's this, you know, we want to, maybe we need to, you know, read a story about someone who did something wonderful, you know, something that uplifts our mind, you know, not eat the whole chocolate cake. You know, we want to do something that truly is a skillful way of, you know, getting over ourselves, you know, and going, yeah, okay, everybody could die today. Isn't this our fear from nuclear holocaust? I mean, you know, so it's just, it's really about just going, so why worry? You know, we're all going to die, and it could be today. Well, so I might as well have a positive state of mind. Try to do no harm, not dwell in, you know, unskillful thoughts, purify whatever I can, you know, whatever I regret today, try to, you know, recognize that you don't want to continue in that way. Rejoice in your good stuff. I mean, it's just this, it's instead of being weighed down by this information, we can see it as, like, the $1 billion lottery ticket of really having a good life, this life and all future lives, so until we become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. It's good news because it reminds us that our future is in our hands or in our mind. So the more we can be uplifted by that this is really good news, and logically that makes sense to look at it that way. So it means every mistake we've made is just something we can purify and move forward and change. We'll have time because our mind will continue. We just want to direct it in a good direction, make strong aspirational prayers.
You were saying that at some point, like anger, it's a negative state of mind. It can generate bad karma. But what about is anxiety? Does that do the same thing? Or fear?
Anything that's about you. Think about it. Negative states of mind are really where we're focused on the self. Either we're nervous for whatever reason. We're afraid of our reputation, we're afraid of not getting the job that we really, really want. We're afraid of not getting, whatever it is, fear. Oh, I'm afraid of this body being harmed. I'm afraid of, being kidnapped and being held in a room with no windows for 20 years. That's all about, how we're going to suffer. I'm afraid, I'm angry because I'm not getting what I want, or the world's not acting like I'd like it to, whatever. I mean, it can be about, but it's something, it reflects a state we don't like. I don't like this. So, it's anger is more dangerous in the sense that anger becomes this wish to actually harm someone. Those people who aren't doing it right. So it's that's why it's a particularly, unskillful, negative state of mind to have. But our other states of mind can lead to that. It's like if you have a near miss in a car, how you can go from fear to real anger at that other person for risking your life by driving like a, crazy person. This is what we do. We and that's self-cherishing. That's all about us. So we want to, recognize that the more we can develop a balanced kind of not grasping after this body, not grasping after this idea we have, this is our ignorance. We think everything exists in a particular way, and it's permanently like that. And even though our intellect knows that's not true, we still are reactive as if it's true. But but being angry at ourselves for having all these unskillful states of mind is practicing the mind of anger. It's not necessary. It's not helpful. That's where we have to be gentle with ourselves, have self-compassion. It's a sign of our suffering. So next week we start karma, right? That is next week.
Venerable Tendron, I have a question. I think it's so. I don't think I'm practicing death and dying correctly. Maybe you can help me with this. I would say for the last year, I think about, especially living alone in this condo, I go around all the time going, well, how will anybody know I'm dead.
Yeah. And why do you think that's so important?
Well, this is why I said maybe you can help me with this, because I don't know if it's important.
Well, where will your mind be?
You and all these nuns, I think, get together.
Your mind will already be in your next life. It literally will not be your problem.
Exactly. So
let it go. So when it arises, go, oh, that's not helping.
So why is it that, like, especially here in the West, I go, oh, I wish I was in India. If that wouldn't come, I wouldn't have.
You're just looking for a geographical cure, Lamo.
Exactly.
What's amazing is that at the time of death, you are going to get a geographical solution. Your mind's going to move on to some other body with a completely different set of variables. So worrying about what's going to happen to your dead body that's left behind is really not worth worrying about.
So it's very self-cherishing.
Well, it's just not even important.
I can't get rid of it. It's like,
well, that's all right. You'll keep working on it. But kind of laugh. Develop a sense of humor about it.
Well, that I do laugh because it's ridiculous.
Yes, it is. I agree. I support your conclusion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. I can't unmute me.
I'll mute you. All right. So, we all do this. We have these thoughts that just hook us, and it's hard to shake them, but we don't have to listen to them forever. We can just kind of go, oh yeah, there I go again. I mean, I talk about this all the time. Whenever I'm invited anywhere, say yes to do anything, I always regret it. In my mind, oh, why did I agree to that? Why, I always want to say no. And I just don't listen to that mind anymore because it's just not true. It's some really strong habit I've got, but it's not accurate at all. So I literally, when the thought comes up, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go. I just think, I don't even, it almost doesn't even, I don't even have to consciously not listen to it. I just think something like, oh, there I go again. Big surprise. It has no import at all. It's just a habit of mine. So, I can't explain it, but that's okay. It's not important enough to worry about. So, but okay. So now let's rejoice. Some of you have been for this whole class. So rejoice in your efforts to talk about, or think about a subject that in the West, for the most part, people don't want to talk about, that we're not willing to talk about. And then, so we can feel good about our at least willingness to kind of look at this, look at the impermanence of our bodies and the fact that this body will actually cease. It's more than just momentary. It will die. It will cease to function altogether and then go back to the earth. So we can feel good about that. We can feel good about that others are doing this. We can rejoice in the efforts of our teachers to try to, explain this to us, and we have text explaining it to us, and so we can rejoice in the fact that nowadays there are recordings and, that we have, it's easy to get something published, in terms of there's paper, and all this stuff. And now it's all digital. We can get it through email. We can look at websites. So there's a lot available to us, and we can rejoice in that because that's the kindness of our teachers, making sure that these things are available for us, and so we can rejoice in their efforts to keep the teachings in the world, and it used to be quite difficult to do. So, but thanks to their kindness, we still have them today, just in a different form. So we no longer have palm leaves, handwritten palm leaves. So we can rejoice about all these things. that, and it's due to our merits that we've encountered them. So we can be happy about that. And so we want to dedicate all the positive potentials that we place in our mind stream in thinking about the teachings to be of benefit to others. And we can also use it to, strengthen our aspirational prayers. So let's recite, where is it? The precious Garland verses that His Holiness recites every day. And we're doing it for the benefit, we really try to keep into our mind all suffering sentient beings, that we're doing this in order to develop our minds to the point that we too are enlightened and we can truly understand what you need in order to end your suffering. So it's this, this very big view. Going for refuge with all forms of respect to the Buddha's excellent doctrine, supreme community, and bodhisattvas, I bow down to all that are worthy of honor. I will turn away from all ill deeds and thoroughly take up all meritorious actions. I will admire all the merits of all embodied beings. With bowed head and joined palms, I petition the perfect Buddhas to turn the wheel of doctrine and remain as long as transmigrating beings remain. Through the merit of having done thus, and through the merit that I did earlier and will do, may all sentient beings aspire to the highest enlightenment. May all sentient beings have all the stainless faculties, release from all conditions of non-leisure, freedom of action, and endowment with good livelihood. Also, may all embodied beings have jewels in their hands, and may all the limitless necessities of life remain unconsumed as long as there is cyclic existence. May all women at all times become supreme persons. May all embodied beings have the intelligence of wisdom and the legs of ethics. May embodied beings have a pleasant complexion, good physique, great splendor, a pleasing appearance, freedom from disease, strength, and long life. May all be skilled in the means to extinguish suffering and have liberation from all suffering, inclination to the three jewels, and the great wealth of Buddha's doctrine. May they be adorned with love, compassion, joy, even-mindedness, devoid of the afflictive emotions, giving, ethics, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. Completing the two collections of merit and wisdom, may they have the brilliant marks and beautiful features even while on the path. And may they cross without interruption the 10 inconceivable grounds. May I also be adorned completely with those and all other good qualities, be freed from all defects, and have superior love for all sentient beings. May I perfect all the virtues for which all sentient beings hope, and may I always relieve the sufferings of all embodied beings. May those beings in all worlds who are distressed through fear, who become entirely fearless, even through merely hearing my name, through seeing or thinking of me or only hearing my name, may beings attain great joy, naturalness free from error, definiteness towards complete enlightenment. And the 5 clairvoyances throughout their continuum of lives, may I always in all ways bring help and happiness to all sentient beings. May I always without harm simultaneously stop all beings in all worlds who wish to commit ill deeds. May I always be an object of enjoyment for all sentient beings according to their wish, and without interference, as are the earth, water, fire, wind, herbs, and wild forest. May I be as dear to sentient beings as their own life, and may they be even more dear to me. May their ill deeds fructify for me, and may all my virtues fructify for them or bear fruit. As long as any sentient being anywhere has not been liberated, may I remain in the world for the sake of that being, though I have attained highest enlightenment. If the merit of saying this had form, it would never fit into realms of world as numerous as the sand grains of the Ganges. Okay, is that it? Yep. Okay. I was reading something where Rinpoche was reminding us that when they say this about the Ganges, it's actually it's the Pacific Ocean. It's what we would call the Pacific Ocean, not the Ganges River. It's even bigger, more grains of sand. So anyway, that's.
Sorry, I just wanted to remind everyone that since next week we start a new chapter, a new module, I mean, there will be a new registration form. So please do register. We'll have those links up by the beginning of the week. Okay, thank you.
So, and Sunday, the usual Sunday setup, meditation beginning at 10:30, teachings at 11. Then, same old. All right. Well, thank you very much. So have meaningful thoughts as you fall asleep this evening.